Now, you know I'm not the biggest fan with the way Games Workshop did away with fantasy, but why did they do it, you know? I've kept my ear to the ground and I've been speculating on this issue, and I'll come forward to you here and give some ideas about what I think and what I've heard, and we can kind of swap ideas on what we think is going on and was going on, at least. And of course, they brought back the old world. But I think, you know, the issues they had with 8th edition, the power creep, which is all internal, that's all internal blame. And then 8th edition was awful, I think. Terrible. I just wouldn't play it. It just changed too much. It wasn't the game I loved. Now they've brought back the old world, and that's essentially the game I love. So, you know, you could say, oh, well, you know, it was less popular. Well, what, less popular than what, you know? You know, the old world's more popular than 8th edition. So, already. So, you know, it's like, what? Maybe that's what made it less popular. You could say, oh, no, it was waning before that. All right, so, you know, it's getting more niche or whatever to try and play longer, more interesting games like that. Maybe GW thought, no, you know, we want real entry-level stuff only, you know, the writing's on the wall. But no, you know, they've got the Horus Heresy and the other stuff, and now they are producing this like that. So how could they have got it to be like a sideline game, a specialist game, I guess, without at least dumping a bunch of the races? And how do they dump a bunch of the races in real time? You know, chop all that away that's not working for them at the moment, and sort of say, hey, we're just going to focus on these 9 factions right now, and then we may do the others down the line. Who knows? I don't know how you'd have done that back in the fantasy timeline, but that's kind of, you know, their problem. But by killing the world, they've left themselves in a strange situation. I'll say that, you know. I don't think it was the best move. They should have come up with a solution. It's not my job to come up with that solution, you know. I'm not a GW employee. If I was, you know, I'd be telling them my input, you know. You could say it had poor sales, right? But then you could also argue that it had poor release support for its model ranges. You know, I'm looking at you, Bretonians. You didn't have a lot of stuff over for a number of years. A very limited range of models anyway, as the army, right? You'd say it was one of the least selling armies, you know. Probably the most plain kind of, that Arthurian kind of real kind of thing. Whereas if you want that more high fantasy type of armies, hey, we got things here with tusks and green skin and all kinds of nonsense. But you want to play humans in armor? Well, all right, we've got you, but, you know, maybe, you know, not many models coming out for that. So maybe dissuaded people coming along to it. Yeah, okay, but then maybe that's, as I've said before, maybe why they've launched with Bretonia now as a kind of proof of concept. Well, hey, if Bretonia can sell out now, then this is going to be crazy, right? You know, possibly them saying, oh, well, it's less popular, okay? Less popular. Well, less popular than what? You know, power creep started killing the morale of the game. 8th edition put a lot of people off, put a lot of people on, and put a lot of people off. Me, it put me off. You know, the kind of gameplay that it pushed towards, meh, that's not my game. That's not my Warhammer. My Warhammer was the editions directly prior to it. And this is what the old world mostly is rolling back to. So, you know, more popular than what? More popular than the old world? It looks like the old world might be more popular in its own way, arguably, right? It's making Age of Sigmar lines sell out. Why? Because those are crossover models, so that people can buy them, try and base them on 25mm or what have you, so they can start doing it nows without having to wait God knows how many months, you know. Harder to introduce new players to, you could say, right? Okay, so, all right, that's somewhat fair, you know. It's the bigger game. But, you know, I don't know. You could say that's harder to introduce players to, but there's a greater satisfaction at the end of it. And what sort of world are we building here, you know? Does everything have to be entry level? Can't we just let Warcry be Warcry, and, you know, Necromunda be Necromunda, and the big game be the big game, and the middle game be the middling game, and so on? Can't we just sort of... And, you know, that's kind of bullshit anyway, because 40k 9th edition went mental, completely mental, and it was so complicated. And it had me have to have 4 books open simultaneously to even play the damn thing, and then multiple card effect things all going off. My data card things, all that bullshit. I hated it. I don't even want to think about 10th edition. What's happened there? Did they improve it? I don't even care at this point whether they've improved it. That's what I thought of 9th edition. How about that? More complicated than fantasy. I learned fantasy as my first game, right? Just after Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl's the first game, but it's a super specialist game. I learned fantasy first, and for years and years I played that before 40k, and then I was actually kind of put off 40k because to me it always seemed more complicated. And it's sort of I get that it's not in a way, because of the actual all the movement rules and all the everything else that makes fantasy a bit more appealing and more chess-like, positional, and bait and all this kind of business, right? Whereas 40k is like, you got this gun, that gun, this gun, and the other. You've got about 6 different gun things in one unit. Blah! Track all of that, and what's the strength of that? What's the strength of this? Okay, and what's this special rules do on this weapon? And okay, one person can throw a grenade. Cool, what does that do? And it's like, blah, you know what I mean? So, it's kind of put me off because of the way I approached, I learned like that, and 40k is like that. And it was like, what the heck's this? And it took me a while to turn and go like that, And then I got it, and then 9th came along, and I was like, brrr. So, okay, so harder to introduce new players to. So maybe it has less kids, right? Some people would argue that's a good thing. I know new kids is lifeblood, and it did have kids anyway in it, It did. They were just tended to be more clever kids. How about that? There, I said that. I just said it. In my experience, at least, my limited field of view. All right. Yes. So more complex rules. Okay, that's a good thing, because it got to a sweet spot where, if you play enough games, you build the knowledge up. Some things are hard, but satisfyingly so to learn, And I think you both work with each other. You make mistakes and stuff like that, but you work it out. And if you have loads and loads of games beyond kind of veteran, then you do end up knowing all the rules and knowing all the everything. And you can very quickly memorize all the weapon skill comparisons and strength to toughness comparisons, and then you can start to memorize all the other doobly-doos because there's not all these multiple weapons and stuff as well. So it kind of makes it easier on that level. So I think it's more satisfying as a game. And there's a lot of other people out there that think it's more satisfying as a game. There's a lot of other people that haven't really picked up miniatures since fantasy was ended and didn't want to go near Age of Sigmar and whatever, or maybe in some cases I built some, but I haven't played it, So I kind of chose a side in theory, but I just never got around to it. And, oh my God, there's always a new Age of Sigmar edition, so I just won't. And then it came because I got into something else. And okay, there is an Age of Sigmar edition, but I'm into something else now. And now it's like, well, okay, so they're on Age of Sigmar 3rd edition, and it's like, well, I'm having to wait for the old world. I guess I could pick up Age of Sigmar now at this point. Oh, no, there's a new edition coming in about 6 months, apparently, or whatever. Oh, well, that would be silly to get into then, wouldn't it? And so on that cycle goes, because they keep on bloody bringing out new things. They keep tampering with things that work, Now, I know that's not always strictly the case with, say, Age of Sigmar 1st edition, which, was really sucking compared to where it got to. But what are they going to do to it now? How are they going to screw it up? They may improve it. But when I just think of like the progression of 6th to 7th edition fantasy, and then to 8th, which to me was the death knell of fantasy. So I'm always nervous about a new edition. I used to be excited about a new edition, but 8th edition kind of ruined things for me like that. Fantasy 8th edition, And so I think it's important to not just update stuff for the sake of it, but to update stuff for the better. You know, there's a lot of things that's happening in the new rules, like in the old world, and I'll wait to be proven wrong. And I'd love to actually play a damned game if they would just release the books, to anybody. Now it's post-release date, but we can't get hold of books. So yeah, so I'd love to have a go on at Warhammer Fantasy and be able to tell you, as to whether the combat resolution benefits in combat, and the fact that the fighting rank thing with the extra models in the front rank thing, and not having step up as the thing anymore, and whether it's comparatively works okay. Because quite frankly, I thought wraparound was quite fine, and I thought that worked great back in prior to 8th, right? And then the people say, oh, no one ever did wraparound. I did wraparound, thank you. That'd be, you'd win a combat and you'd take some people from the back and you'd put them onto the flanks of the enemy into combat, and you could do it every turn, kind of successively, add more and more if you keep winning the combat. And you've then got the flank on them, which lets you get more attacks on them. It's optional, and then you can get more models fighting that way against each other, and also get the flank as well on the enemy. So I liked wraparound. So, and you had to sacrifice your rank bonus to do it, kind of thing. So, and that I was fine with that. I played greenskins, so rank bonus was through the roof anyway. So I don't know how that's going to compare. That whole front rank thing, and all the front rank can kind of fight with at least one attack. Because I don't want to see these exploit things with really wide units, stupidly wide, against one dude on a horse here. And then there's people all the way 11, 12, 13, 14 in one line like this. And there's one guy fighting, and then they all get to hit him, kind of thing. That would be quite annoying. So I don't want it to necessarily encourage that. So I'm sure there'll be some kind of meta problems, because these games, they actually have to be play tested by the public, and they need a damned living rule book. That's what they need. Before you get a printed one, you just need to release the rule book, make it free, do what Mantic do or something. Just say, here's the rule book, we're going to change it a bunch on you. Don't release these FAQs and errators and all that bullshit, and give us your freaking pink text of what to change where and all that shit. Just change the actual rule book, and then when you've changed it enough, print the rule book. Right? Oh, it's never done. No, it's never. If it's never done, then what the hell are you doing? Bringing out new units, I guess, right? That will break it. Well, you don't have to really anymore. You're in the old world. Brilliant. Great. Find a sweet spot. Stop updating it. Great. Right? But playtest that sweet spot with a publicly available living rulebook. No. So, anyway, I think Warhammer Fantasy was a more complex, satisfying game. Also, Warhammer Games Workshop lost this big sort of legal battle over being able to try and claim copyright on entities, units within the universe. I mean, I don't know what they're trying to do there. They sort of, Space Marines, a generic thing like that. It's going to be hard to do, isn't it? The Astartes, yeah, sure, you can copyright that, I guess. But, the specificity of how they work. But they can't really copyright orcs and dwarves and all that kind of business. So, we had those elements which are Tolkien-esque, right? So they come in from Middle Earth, and they predate Warhammer Fantasy. They're only borrowing from wider, greater known concepts of fantasy tropes. So they obviously can't copyright it, and it almost makes them look bad to try and claim ownership of anything like this, especially these races. And it doesn't look good from GW because they've had that whole like bullying past and bullying third-party creators and supporters and then shutting them down and then bringing out their own versions of that eventually for a niche that the other person filled better and then not fulfilling it as well as the third party did, and then everyone's salty over that, and on those problems go, you know. You know, there's that thing that you can kind of see that Games Workshop probably were trying to claim orcs and elves and things like that for themselves, because in Age of Sigmar they did elves. Yeah, that's a Penelope Pitstop version of an elf. We had the Duarden. That's the West Country dwarf, and the Orcs instead of the orcs, and it's stuff like that. Like, what a joke! What a joke! You know, most of you know that is a bloody laugh, don't you? And guess what? You can give them a silly name if you want, but you still cannot copyright their form. You know, that's classic fantasy still. Get in line. Just chill out. You know, do what Mantic do. Just chill out. It's good. You know, Kings of War is getting by fine. They're piggybacking kind of off of GW range of models even, but they're saying, play your GW models with us. And here's the free rule book. You know, it's mental. But you've really got to admire what they are doing really there, you know. And if the rules hold up, then why not play damn Kings of War? Do you like Kings of War? It's a good question for you. Have you played it? How does it hold up against possibly this sort of conglomerative fantasy thing that called the Old World right now? This non-8th edition Old World fantasy. How does Kings of War hold up? Because I haven't played it. It'd be really interesting to hear what you think of that. I guess you could argue, you know, bring back Warhammer Historical and, you know, the real time of Legends, you know. And I saw a group actually spoke about this. It was very funny. I'd love to be able to play Warhammer Historical Armies. That would be incredible, using Warhammer the Old World rules, but with real units. Just do it like on a print on demand, made to order kind of thing or whatever, you know. Whatever, just let you know, those that want to do it, let's do it. One group was saying online, joking about this, and said, you know, why would GW bring back the historical armies and let you play that sub-game when they can bring them back as, I don't know, under the Emperor, the mighty Armin of Remans, you know, or the Assyrians, or the, oh, here comes the mighty Persian army. You know, beware of the Spartans. You know, this is Sparta. But overall, it. So I've kind of tried to put forward a few ideas about why they may have got rid of it. I think, perhaps, but I don't know. I think that's a bit daft, and I think I'm not convinced by that. And I think the fact that Total War Warhammer has done as well as it has, and the Old World is already doing as well as it has, I think proves that really getting rid of it like that with the end times was a bloody mistake. And apparently I've heard that there's a number of people that played Total War Warhammer, right, that have never played Warhammer games before, and they said, yeah, this is great, this setting's great, man, I'd love to play this game. And then said, oh, they've killed it. They killed it. They blew up the world. So what's the point then? What's the point? Exactly. Oh, you can roll back a couple 100 years before you did any of that stuff in that computer game. Oh, okay. It's like, exactly. So screw all the fluff, screw all the lore, screw all the everything at this point. Let's just play the pretty rule set. We can't have it all, right, with a little broken thing. We can try and guess why they killed fantasy. and just try and enjoy what we've got, the scraps of what we've got, until someone else comes along as a competitor. I'm not happy with Games Workshop. Can you tell? I'm never happy, and I know you could call it the low hanging fruit to beat up on them, right? But when you've bought in over the years, you've been that customer, and you've invested so much, and then they just pull the rug. And then I've said it before in another video, and now they're starting again with the old world. No. Buy our novels for the setting. Buy our novels. Oh yes, get into the lore, get into all these new characters. They're all dead by the time the characters you played came along. They're nothing. They're mouldering. Play our new characters. And there's almost something cheapens about the idea of these GW products, because like even a lot of the books and that, they just ended up getting pulped, out of production. Like the fantasy ones I'm going back to, I had a real heck of a time trying to get hold of like the old dwarves one, the Gavthorpe trilogy of books. Real bad time trying to get that, and I couldn't get it as an ebook or anything, so that kind of support isn't there. Anyway, I've speculated a bit, and we've waxed around the whole topic again, and I'm really thankful that I've at least got the old world, and I'm still here, and I'm going to be pushing on with old world content, and I'm going to see you there, and we're going to do some games and try some things we've never done before on this channel as well. Why not? And I will see you at the table, my old long beard grumpy fellow ones. See you soon.